I love flipping and frogging.
You gotta really muscle them out of there.
Get the heavy equipment out.
Where you can really bowl a fish, you can tear them right through those weeds.
The classic Ned Rig.
Number one being a Rocco.
If you put that in front of a smallmouth, it's like an after dinner mint, they will bite it.
Welcome to Angling Buzz. It's late June and we're into primetime summer patterns across the Midwest. The walleyes are slipping into deeper structures in a lot of lakes. We've had a number of bug hatches, bluegills and crappies are done spawning a while ago, and now they're setting up on developing weed lines in our northern natural lakes.
What a beauty. That's awesome.
Bass are all over the board right now. Depending on the lake, you have shallow water slop fish holding in any shallow water vegetation like lily pad fields. Well, it's time to break out the frogs there. And a lot of fish are around boat docks right now. Skipping stickworms and jigs, that's a good way to catch bass from both docks and boat lifts. Moving to mid-range depths, some bass are spread out in massive weed flats. The deep weed edge, that's key. It's a pivot point that concentrates a lot of bass during the summer months.
Just like that. Sweet.
Beyond the deep weed lines, hard bottom and rocks can gather both largemouth and smallmouth. Today, we're focusing on summer bass patterns. Today, we're joined by Bassmaster Elite Series angler and Bassmaster Classic champion, Jeff Gustafson. Jeff, what can you share with us about some early season bass patterns?
You know, traveling across the country to fish the Bassmaster Elite Series, I get to fish a lot of different varieties of waters, and some shallow, some deep, and then I get to spend most of the summer fishing up north. I'm spoiled. Our fishing up north is so good, so fun, and generally early in the season, early in the summer, we want to focus on shallow water. That's where the biggest number of fish are. They're leaving their spawning areas and starting to kind of push out to the main basin, main lake areas. I'm going to go through some of my favorite baits for early season bass fishing. And you're generally going to want to fish pretty shallow, especially up north. For me, find the good grass. It could be the, the pads and reeds, bulrushes, maiden cane, that kind of stuff. And then eventually it's going to turn into the submergent stuff, your milfoil, coontail, cabbage. Bass love that stuff. And the deal is just sort of figuring out where they're at. So my first choice is, I love flipping and frogging, get the heavy equipment out, straight braid, and you can attack the heaviest grass, the heaviest cover you can find, and a lot of times that holds the biggest fish. So that's one of the Northland Elite Series frogs, really good bait, good hooks on it. I've caught a lot of big fish on that this year. And then, if you get flipping, obviously there's a lot of good flipping baits out there, but I like something that's kind of sleek that I can get in those holes in the grass. Generally, I'm gonna go with a 1/2 ounce weight. And then, as the cover gets a little bit heavier, sometimes you gotta go up to 3/4 or even 1 ounce to sort of punch through everything. As we get out, start pushing out to more of the deeper submergent stuff. Few baits that I'm gonna, employ. A chatterbait, really good for covering water. That chatterbait's probably been responsible for more tournament wins over the last few years than any other bait, and it's really good for covering water. Goes through the grass pretty good for not having a weed guard or anything, but one of the keys is hit the grass with it. If you're fishing in 8 feet of water and the grass comes up to 4 feet, you want to be ticking the tops of the grass with that bait. That's going to trigger a lot of strikes. Same deal with a crankbait. That's a Northland Pro Sunny B. Really good profile. It kind of imitates a crawfish. It'll imitate a bluegill, small panfish, stuff that bass eat. And then the other bait that I really like for covering water, which is important if you get on some of these, massive flats and, you probably feel like it's a needle in a haystack to start the day, is a swim jig. And swim jigs are awesome because they go through any kind of cover you throw them in. I'll use them a lot in the pads and the reeds, this kind of stuff like behind me, but also good in that a little bit deeper water as well. And like I say, really weedless, kind of go through everything.
That's a lot of great information about largemouth bass. Now, what about smallmouth bass?
So early in the season, smallmouths love grass too, and for me, again, getting to cover some water, top water is really good. It just gets their attention. Just about anywhere I've ever fished up north, you got to have a top water tied on, and that's a Pro Sunny Bee twin spin Northland, one of the Elite Series baits. These things come with good hooks on them, and especially, you know, you're going to see some mayfly, dragonfly hatches happening right now. These sort of little prop buzzer style baits really are really good when those hatches are happening. Stuff's buzzing on the surface. And then the old classic marabou jig, and this has been, that little guy's been responsible for more big smallmouths in my boat than any other bait over all the years fishing up north, fishing a lot of tournaments around home. And this is one of the new Northland jigs. Comes with a Gamakatsu hook. I think these are the best marabou jigs you can buy. I made my own for years, but they come in 3 different sizes, an 8th, a 3/32, and a 16th. The 3/32 that's what that is. That's kind of your most standard size for just all around. If you're fishing really shallow, fish are higher in the water column, you go to the 16th. A little bit windy day, some current, maybe you want to go with the 8th. One of my tricks with the marabou jigs is I really like to put a little plastic body on the shank of the hook, and we made these jigs with a little keeper to hold that piece on there. I don't want it dangling behind or trailing behind. Just that little piece of plastic on there gives the jig some body so it doesn't look like a drowned rat in the water, and you can cast it a little bit farther as well. But that marabou jig, if you put that in front of a smallmouth, it's like an after dinner mint. They will bite it.
Yeah, marabou jigs, they're one of my favorite baits for smallmouth bass when the fishing gets tough, especially in clear water. Well, thanks, Jeff, for your time and sharing some insight into summer bass fishing. Good luck the rest of the season.
Thanks, boys. Everyone get out there. It's the best time of year to bass fish. Go have some fun.
In this next segment, we're joined by Al and James Lindner. They're going to share some tips into frog fishing topwater bass.
Ooh, there's a good one. Ooh, ooh, there. Oh. One thing when you go in slop fishing, I mean, the right tools, you know, tackle, rod, reel, and line is an instrumental aspect. If you have too light of a rod, there's no way you can land them. You got to muscle them out. I got the St. Croix Legend Tournament heavy power fast action rod. This is 7'4" in length, but it's a very, very powerful rod. I mean, where you can really bowl a fish, you can tear them right through those weeds when you have to. You know, as far as a reel goes, this is Daiwa's Tatula, but this is a 300 8.1 gear ratio reel, really fast action reel, and it's got that really wide spool, the T-wing system for to really open up the aperture for long accurate casts. It's a really nice reel, and it's got the double paddles, so we've got a little bit larger paddle system on there. I think these is 190 millimeter handle, but you can really help you winch fish out of heavy cover. You know, there's a number of different lines you can use for slop fishing. I actually use a 50-pound Suffix 832. This color is actually coastal camo, which I really like. It's sort of a mottled white blue in darker blue, so it's got a really nice silhouette against the sky. Because, you know, a lot of guys like running 65, but I'll share something with you. One thing with about 832 with 50, it's a little bit thinner, and what that enables you to do is literally shear the weeds off. You can cut them off, which I really like. Oh, there's a big one there, Al. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. There, you gotta lean. This is one of those ones where you gotta put your, you gotta put your knees into getting them out of there. There you go. Come on, buddy. There you go. Come here. That's a whippersnapper. There we go. That's what I mean with, look at the size of that one there. You just lift them out of the water. You mean business, you know. Boy, that's a beautiful bass there. That's fun fishing when those fish are launching it like that.
Topwater frog fishing in the summertime, that's a ton of fun. Next, we're joined by Bob Downey. He's going to be talking about some post-spawn strategies for largemouth bass.
Hey everyone, Bob Downey here. I want to talk to you a little bit about fishing for largemouth bass in the post-spawn period. You know, in our lakes around the house right now, and primarily in the Midwest, our natural lakes, our grass lines aren't totally established. We got some grass coming up on those flats and some out on the deeper edges, but those fish don't really seem to relate to those edges or the gravel bars that are off of the edge of the grass or the mid-lake humps quite yet. It takes them a little bit of time to get out there, but those post-spawn fish will tend to filter out onto those flats. They'll find new emergent grass that's just coming up, and I like to target it with reaction style baits. Number one being a Rocco. This is square bill, great bait for that, you know, 2 to 6 foot range, ticking the tops of the grass, finding isolated clumps, maybe holes in the grass. Number two is a chatterbait. This is a freeloader on the back there. I like that trailer if I'm wanting to get my bait down a little bit, you know, let's say that 5 to 10 foot range. If I'm up shallower, targeting a shallower flat, I do like the cleanup craw on the back of that. It'll just help keep your bait up and help it rise a bit more. You won't have to fight it so much in the grass if you can keep it up above it a bit. Lastly is a swim jig. This is an all-terrain tackle swim jig with a Rapala Crush City cleanup craw on the back. I like that setup once again if I'm in shallow or emergent vegetation. So maybe you found a spawning pocket, there's some emergent vegetation around it or maybe just outside of it. That swim jig's a really good way to maybe pick off some big females that are recouping in that emergent vegetation, whether it's pads, cattails, bulrushes, that sort of deal, before they really get out on the edges of the grass lines. If I'm wanting to get my swim jig down a little bit more, I'll put a mayor on there, which is a swim bait, a 3 or 4 inch, depending on the size that I'm trying to imitate. You know, this happens to be a white one. Bluegill colors work really well in our natural lakes as well. So reaction style baits, get out on those flats where those fish are kind of filtering to. They're not quite out set up on the edges of the grass lines or on those rock or gravel humps or points like they do in the summertime. A really good way to locate fish, and then once you find them, you can pick it apart with these baits as well as slow down with some of your traditional dragon plastics, dragon jigs, that sort of deal. So that's my setup, and a couple setups I like for post-spawn largemouth fishing.
This week we're featuring the Angler Sun Hoodie in our Blackfish giveaway. Now the Sun Hoodie is awesome. It's super lightweight and comfortable. It features a 4-way stretch material. It also has cooling technology and it's moisture wicking. And the best part is it has a 30+ UPF, and it's going to keep you protected from the sun. Now you can win this hoodie if you head to AnglingBuzz.com and click on our giveaways or scan the QR code below.
And now it's time for our cool products. We're starting out with the Cast Short from Blackfish Gear. This features 4-way stretch. These are very comfortable, very breathable shorts. They're DWR coated, so water beads off them. They feature a cell phone pocket on the left side, and then the front 2 pockets have a lot of space in there. These will keep you comfortable and cool out in the summer heat from Blackfish Gear, the Cast Short. Next, a couple jig options from Northland Tackle. First up is the Cabbage Crusher jig. This is in their Elite Series line. This features a double titanium weed guard. You have 2 different keepers on here. There's a keeper to keep a skirt on there, and then a wire guard keeper that's great for soft plastics. So you could use like a crawfish style bait or even a swim bait. This is great for summertime bass fishing around cover. And if you're not fishing around cover, well, you have the Mimic swim jig. This is also in the Elite Series jig from Northland Tackle. This would be more for open water fishing, sparse rocks, gravel, sparse weeds. Both of these jigs feature premium Gamakatsu hooks. 2 great options from Northland Tackle. Next, from Daiwa, the PX BF70 bait casting reel. This is designed for ultra finesse fishing. The BF stands for bait finesse. It features a T-wing system for smooth line flow, reducing backlashes, and more accurate and longer casts. It has a UTD Ultimate Tournament drag system. It also has an A7075 air spool for 56% less weight than the Tatula SV70. This is designed for ultra finesse fishing in a bait casting model. The Daiwa PX BF70 bait casting reel. And from Rapala, the X-Rap prop. Summertime means topwater fishing, and this is a fantastic bait. It features 2 stainless steel props that make sounds on the surface that bass can't resist. And my preferred way to fish it is with a snap pause. So I'll cast it out, rip it once, let it pause, maybe rip it a couple times, and it kind of on the surface. And the fish, most of the time, they're gonna hit on the pause. This can really call up some big bites during the summertime. The Rapala X-Rap prop. And now it's time for our technique of the week.
The classic Ned Rig. You know, the Ned Rig really took the angling world by storm a few years back. Now it's one of the most popular ways that I like to fish. You know, it's great for customers. I do a ton of guiding. I'm a multi-species angler. This bait catches smallmouth, largemouth, walleyes, pike, you name it. And it's so simple. You look at something like this where it's got that classic Ned head, you pitch it out there, and this bait's gonna stay buoyant. You can drag it along the bottom so it looks like a defensive crayfish. You can pitch it out there, you can swim it through the water column. So with Ned Rigs, because you're dragging the bottom a lot, I like to use like a braided line for a main line, but then a fluorocarbon leader. What I like about that fluorocarbon is it's gonna be a lot more abrasion resistant, so if you have zebra mussels down there, or pike love Ned Rigs, so it's gonna keep you from breaking off all the time. But I also like that too when I'm popping that bait, that this bait's not gonna come up and catch the braids. So I'll just run a 2 or 3 foot fluorocarbon leader on here. And then I'm usually using them on a spinning reel with this is a medium powered, extra fast 7.3 rod. But I'm just gonna cast the Ned Rig out there. I'm gonna let it hit the bottom. Okay, you can use it with forward-facing sonar and point at fish and cast to them. Or you can throw at boulders, weed lines, doesn't matter. But when I'm working this bait, I'm just gonna kind of work it slow back to the boat and then let it sit there. Work it slow back to the boat, let it sit there. You can just kind of pop that thing along the bottom and work that bait back to the boat. Ned Rigs definitely gain popularity with the bass world because they simply work. But for walleye fishing, don't overlook them. They are an absolute walleye killer, especially on lakes that have a lot of crayfish. I fish lakes like Mille Lacs and Leech Lake. There's times where Ned Rigs are my go-to. If you want to catch fish, tie on a Ned Rig. It's simple to use and it catches everything.
Well, Ned Rigs, they work just about everywhere smallmouth and largemouth bass live. And remember to stop the spread of aquatic invasive species anytime you're leaving any body of water clean, drained, dry. Be sure to visit us online at AnglingBuzz.com. We have more videos, guide reports, in-depth blogs, and much more. And you can follow us across our social medias. It's simply AnglingBuzz, YouTube, of course, and also Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.